My first poetry presentation will be over Sylvia Plath and the importance that her life played to American literature and history. I have been a Plathian now for several years. I have been studying her poetry, her form, her structure. I find her poetry fascinating, and I often find myself trying to mimic her style, her language, her tone. She is known for one excellence of her writing in history, and her style, how the effects it played towards mid-20th century women at the time. Her significance comes from her role as a poet, but being a poet, her writing opened the door for feminist martyrs, as well as treatment of psychiatric patients. And I really feel that it's because of that is why I love her writing so much. I also write dark poetry. I write and discuss issues of mental illness, depression, suicide, bipolar, in my writing. She is known as a confessional poet, and if you are not real familiar with confessional poets, they write on a basis of personal attachment, so they don't always come out and say, this is about me, but there is something in their poetry that is linked or tied to their life or the life that they are leading in the current time. Her life can be explored through her poetry and her stories, and you'll see that if you read many of her poems all throughout. And it'll also give you a better understanding of the importance that her poetry played in American history. She was brought up in a normal setting life. Her father was a professor of biology, so she was really brought up in an academics family setting. She is known for her first poem being published in the Boston Herald in 1940 when she was 8 years old. Later that year, her father would die from complications in a surgery from his diabetes. And that is really where we see the difference in Plath and how her life starts to be based on depression. You'll see her struggles that she's had from the death of her father, such as in the collection of the Colossus, especially in the poems The Beekeeper's Daughter and Daddy, which I will be discussing in detail here in a moment. Daddy is my favorite poem of Plath of all times. Plath was awarded an editorship in New York working for Mademoiselle magazine over a short story that she won. After that is where she later wrote and published, based off of that editorship, her novel, her one and only novel, The Bell Jar. If you have not read The Bell Jar, I would suggest picking that up and reading it. When she returned from New York, she was accepted into Harvard summer course. She said she really just wanted to see if she had the guts to be able to go to Harvard. She started electroshock therapy in the 1950s, and we kind of see at this point where her depression becomes worse. After that treatment, she made her first suicide attempt, and just as the portrayed in The Bell Jar, such as the line that says, I took the glass of water and the bottle of pills and went down into the cellar. I unscrewed the bottle of pills and started taking them swiftly between gulps of water one by one. She was hospitalized at McLean Hospital for about 6 months. After that, she received a Fulbright scholarship to study in England the next year at Cambridge, and that is where she met her future husband and poet, Ted Hughes. They were married in 1956, and they moved to London. It wasn't long. It was a few years later whenever Plath realized the infidelity of her husband, and she began writing a sequel to The Bell Jar, where that discusses how she discovered her husband cheating on her. Plath committed suicide in 1963. She killed herself by putting her head in a gas oven. Even though she is an amazing poet on her style of confessional poetry, she is still known more today for her suicide and how she committed suicide than her actual poetry. She was working on her collection called Ariel whenever she died, and it is said to be known that Edge was her last poem and is considered to be her suicide note. It has phrases such as "we have come so far, it is over," words like "dead," "stiffens," and "empty." So right now I'm going to play for you Daddy, instead of trying to read it, because I cannot do it justice.
Daddy, you do not do any more black shoe in which I have lived like a foot for 30 years, poor and white, barely daring to breathe or chew. Daddy, I have had to kill you. You died before I had time. Marble heavy, a bag full of God, ghastly statue with one gray toe big as a Frisco seal, and a head in the freakish Atlantic, where it pours bean green over blue in the waters off beautiful Nauset. I used to pray to recover you, ach, du, in the German tongue in the Polish town, scraped flat by the roller of wars. But the name of the town is common. My Polack friend says there are a dozen or two. So I never could tell where you put your foot, your root. I never could talk to you. The tongue stuck in my jaw. It's stuck in a barbed wire snare. Ich. I could hardly speak. I thought every German was you. And the language obscene, an engine, chuffing me off like a Jew to Dachau, Auschwitz, Belsen. I began to talk like a Jew. I think I may well be a Jew. The snows of the Tyrol, the clear beer of Vienna, are not very pure or true. With my gypsy ancestress and my weird luck, and my Tarok pack, I may be a bit of a Jew. I have always been scared of you, with your Luftwaffe, your gobbledygoo, and your neat moustache, and your Aryan eye, bright blue. Panzerman, oh you, not God, but a swastika. So black no sky could squeak through. Every woman adores a fascist, the boot in the face, the brute heart of a brute like you. You stand at the blackboard, Daddy, and the picture I have of you, a cleft in your chin instead of your foot. But no less a devil for that, no, not any less the black man who bit my pretty red heart in two. I was 10 when they buried you. At 20, I tried to die and get back to you. I thought even the bones would do. But they pulled me out of the sack, and they stuck me together with glue. And then I knew what to do. I made a model of you, a man in black with a Mein Kampf look, and a love of the rack and the screw, and I said, I do. So, Daddy, I'm finally through. The black telephone's off at the root, the voices just can't worm through. If I've killed one man, I've killed two. The vampire who said he was you, and drank my blood for a year. 7 years, if you want to know. Daddy, you can lie back now. There's a stake in your fat black heart. and the villagers never liked you. They are dancing and stamping on you. They always knew it was you. Daddy, daddy, you bastard, I'm through.
In this poem, Daddy, it still remains one of the most controversial modern poems ever written. It's so dark and surreal, and it uses metaphors and other devices to carry out the ideal of this female victim who is finally freeing herself from her father. Or in Plath's own words, she said, "Here is a poem spoken by a girl with an electric complex. Her father died while she thought he was God." And electric complex is the psychoanalysis female version of Freud's Oedipus complex. So she already knew when she was writing this that here is something. There is an underlying issue about this poem. If she can sit here and say in her own words that it's spoken by a girl with an electric complex, then we know that it is dealing with a deeper issue than that's on the surface. It combines personal with methodical, but it's I always thought that it was so strange how she would write this poem about her father, who she felt like was a god, but in the same setting she mixes in her husband and into the 14th stanza. It has this eerie, kind of like a nursery rhyme style to it. You can see all the World War II emphasis with this poetry. And really fast, I just want to go through a couple things about it. It says in lines 1 through 5, you do not do any more black shoe, in which I have lived like a foot for 30 years, poor and white, barely daring to breathe or chew. So she's addressing her father, and it has this sense similar to the old lady who lived in the shoe rhyme to it. In line 6 through 10, she says, "Daddy, I have to kill you. You died before I had time. Marble heavy, a bag full of God. Ghastly statue with one gray toe, big as a fresco seal." And I really feel like she's talking about him and his dying. I know he died from surgery complications of diabetes, and it could have possibly been they were having to amputate his toe. As we go on through, you will start to see the similarities between her, the speaker in the poem, with her own husband. It talks about how her dad, in lines 51 through 55, says, "You stand at the blackboard, Daddy, in the picture I have of you, a cleft in your chin instead of your foot, but no less a devil for that, not less than the black man who." And then she talks about how they pulled her back out of the sack and stuck her together with glue. And I really feel like this is her way of discussing the different types, attempts of suicide she had on her life. In 66 through 70, she says, "In a love of the rack and the screw, and I said I do, so Daddy, I'm finally through. The black telephone's off the root, the voices just can't worm through." So she marries a man that's pretty much the image of her father's, a sadist. So she no longer needs her father now. She can cut off the communication with him. She can let him be dead because she has a replacement. Line 71 through 75 says, "If I've killed one man, I've killed two. The vampire who said he was you and drank my blood for a year. 7 years, if you want to know, Daddy. You can lie back now." 7 years was as long as they were married. She did not literally kill anyone, but it's almost like she's getting rid of this worm she's talking about that's worming its way through her life and infecting her like a parasite. And then 76 through 80, she says, there's a stake in your fat black heart, and the villagers never liked you. They were dancing and stepping on you. You always knew it was you, Daddy, Daddy, you bastard, I'm through. So she's telling him she's really letting him go at this point. She no longer needs him to be around. She doesn't need him anymore. She has her replacement now, and she's finally able to let this man go, who she has seen as a God complex and who pretty much broke her, is what she's overall saying. You know, Daddy, you've broke me, and so she's able to let him go. My questions mostly for you is, do you, have you read much Plath poetry? Are you a confessional poet? Do you write a lot of poetry that's based off maybe just an image or some kind of tie to your own life? And then the other thing that I wanted to ask is, in this poem of Daddy, do you feel that she has finally let her dad go during this? Do you feel like the poem, it seems to sound like hate, but do you think it's hate towards her father that she had, or do you feel like it's the brokenness that is as a result of him dying and leaving her so young? I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. I will also leave a link or also leave the poem so that you can go back and kind of look through that.